Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. So in this video we will discuss deep vein thrombosis. I have seen hundreds of questions related to deep vein thrombosis. Once we are reading the question, we may not think, okay, this has some connection related to deep vein thrombosis. But this is like mixed with many of the other topics. That's why we feel such confusion. So now we will just get a brief explanation about DVT and we will discuss some questions also. Shall we start? What do you mean DVT or when it will come? It is like a venous thromboembolism which includes DVT and its complication of pulmonary embolism. We know that the client who usually diagnosed with DVT, we will consider it's a life-threatening complication. Why? When? Because there's a chances of pulmonary embolism. That emboli will move to the circulation and reach the pulmonary circulation, and that will leads to the life-threatening complication. That's why we should very much aware and take care of the clients with the DVT, and we should take the measures to prevent the occurrence of DVT. DVT is the most common form and occurs most often, around 80% in the proximal deep veins of the lower extremities. Wittgenstein describes the three most common theories behind the pathophysiology of DVT. That includes venous stasis, endothelial damage, and hypercoagulability of blood. See, these three theories, that is the one connected with DVT, that we usually call it as Wittgenstein's. Any situation or any condition, any of this theory or any of this problem will develop, that will result to DVT. We'll see what are some of the common risk factors. Trauma. In the trauma, especially the endothelial injury and venous stasis from the immobility. So what are the cases of those immobility will happen? Especially the client, those who undergone for major surgery, that says this venous stasis will develop because of the prolonged immobilization. And the client, those who have diagnosed with stroke, or the person or the people, those who travel for a long time, that will causing the venous stasis, that is also develop DVT. Then another one, the pregnancy. We know that in the pregnancy stage, it is like in a hypercoagulable stage. And the another one, long-term use of oral contraceptives, especially the combination of estrogen. And the another one, the patient, those who have a long-term habit of smoking. Then some of the underlying malignancy problems, old age, obesity, and the varicose vein. So these all are the risk factors will leads to the DVT. So once we found such risk factors, we should take some of the preventive measures, and some of them are like a modified risk factors. So it is very important to understand the problems before it is going to occur. That is the main thing related to DVT. Not only DVT, many of the other conditions. So now we will move to one question. The nurse is assigned to the following clients. Which client does the nurse assess or identify as being at greatest risk for development of DVT? So the question is directly asked, out of the four conditions or the four options, which client who is the greatest risk for developing DVT? We'll see the first one first, a 25-year-old client with abdominal pain who smokes cigarettes and takes oral contraceptives. Option 2, a 55-year-old ambulatory client with exacerbation of chronic bronchitis and hematocrit of 56%. I hope you know the normal hematocrit. A 72-year-old client with a fever who is 2 days post coronary stent placement. And option 4, an 80-year-old client who is 4 days postoperative from repair of a fractured hip. So out of this option, what do you think, which one could be a right answer, or in which client who have the greatest risk for developing DVT? We'll see the options one by one. See, the first option, the client age. We know that old age is one of the risk factor. Here the client is 25 years old with abdominal pain who smokes cigarettes and take oral contraceptives. Here we know that the two symptoms we can see. One is smoking cigarettes and the another one the client is using oral contraceptives. Okay, so that one will increase the plasma fibrinogen and the coagulability factors can and cause hypercoagulability of blood. But the client is not at greatest risk. Why? Compared to other options or other clients, this client is not that much greatest risk. So we will just keep it. We'll move to the other options. Always keep a thing in your mind that we should discuss. When we will see an option, we will think, okay, these are some of the risk factors we already studied. Okay, this might be. No, you should compare, because here they ask the question, the greatest risk, which means all the client have risk. All the client may develop DVT. But out of the four, one is the greatest risk. So that one we should compare. The next client we will see, a 55-year-old ambulatory client. Here the word you should understand, ambulatory client with exacerbation of chronic bronchitis and the hematocrit of 56%. Okay, the hematocrit is little bit elevated. But compared to the option 1 or other options, the client is not that much vulnerable to get DVT because it's ambulatory client. So we will just keep it that one. We'll see other option. Okay, the option 3, a 72-year-old client with a fever who is 2 days post coronary stent placement. Okay, in this scenario the age is a little bit high and also 2 days post coronary stent placement. So we should think again. Okay, the anticoagulants and the antiplatelet agents are administered usually before and after coronary stent placement. So when we will see that, okay, 2 days, okay, client might be immobilized or not walking like frequently. But the one thing that usually before this procedure, there is anticoagulants and antiplatelets they will administer. So this client is increased risk due to endothelial damage and advanced age, but is not that much risk. Why? We will see the other option, then we will understand why we are just keeping all these other options. An 80-year-old client who is 4 days post-operative from a repair of a fractured hip. See here the age is a problem and the same time the 4 days post-operative of the fractured hip. An 80-year-old client with the fractured rib, the surgery, the chances of immobility also high, or the period of inactivity is prolonged or too long. So here we will get more risk factors. That's why out of these 4 options, the option 4 or the client with the option 4 is the greatest risk of developing DVT. Because of the advanced age, in this slides you can see why advanced age and the raised risk of developing DVT because of the this procedure also, immobility. So I hope the options it's clear to you. The main problem, this type of questions, when we will see, suddenly we will choose one option, but that not be correct, because we have to compare with all other options. There might be one extra risk factor or one extra point that is making one particular option or one particular client is more risk compared to other clients. That's why when we are discussing such questions, we always feel a confusion or a little bit like lack of connection, why it's coming like this. I hope this is clear to you. So we'll move to the next question. After a prolonged surgical procedure, the client reports unilateral leg pain. Which client assessment finding is most concerning? So after a prolonged surgical procedure, the client reports unilateral leg pain. So which client assessment finding is most concerning? Out of the assessment or the symptoms given as an options, one sign is most concerned because that is shows the client is going to develop some serious problems. We'll see. Option 1, client rates leg pain as 7. Option 2, negative Hammond sign. Option 3, prominent varicose veins bilaterally. Option 4, right calf is 4 centimeter larger than left calf. So what do you see, which could be the main problem? We know that the option 2 here we can suddenly we can eliminate negative Homan sign. Negative Homan sign, the positive Homan sign is the sign or the symptom of DVT. But here it's negative Homan sign. So that is not a something issue or symptom that the nurse should concern. Negative, so there is no problem. We can eliminate that one. Then the prominent varicose vein bilaterally. So the varicose vein, we know that it is one of the complication that also client may develop DVT. But that is not that much accurate. So we will keep that one. Then the another option is right calf is 4 centimeter larger than left calf. So what do you think? What is the main signs and symptoms of DVT? Here you can see the main signs and symptoms are like unilateral leg pain, warmth, tenderness, positive Homan sign. So these are the some things. So here the client says the centimeter there will be difference, like right half is 4 centimeter larger than the left half. Why it happened? Because the surgery was a prolonged surgery and the client was immobilized, so the chances of getting DVT is high in this situation. So that's why we should compare the symptoms which is more concerned or which is more accurate, which will give them more accurate information to we get notification to the doctor, to pass the information to the doctor. So the classic symptoms include of DVT include unilateral leg edema, then the local warmth, erythema, low-grade fever, and that's why there is a swelling. So when the swelling will come compared to the another leg, this calf will be little more high centimeter. Then we'll see the another option. The option 1, the client have leg pain that is rate as 7. So the level of pain is not as sensitive as the sign of edema. And severe pain is not a classic sign. Leg discomfort described as a sense of fullness, dullness, tightness, aching or heaviness is more typical of DVT. Then the option 2 we already eliminate, and the another option 3 we saw that varicose veins can be a risk factor for DVT, but the presence alone is not a significant. That means that is the comparison we should keep in our mind. It is not only by only with this particular varicose vein we can say the client has developed DVT. No, there are some symptoms. There are more accurate symptoms we should find. So that's why our answer for this question is option 4, right half is 4 centimeter larger than the left half. We'll see one more questions about DVT. Because why I am discussing questions in different scenario, because you'll get an idea, okay, only for the small topic how the questions are coming from different domain or how the questions are presented, and how we can identify the correct answer based on the basic information that we have. We'll see the question. The nurse provides discharge instructions to a client who was hospitalized for a DVT that is now resolved. Which of the following instructions should the nurse include to prevent the recurrence of DVT? Select all that apply. So the select all that apply questions, and also the client already developed DVT and now it's resolved, but what are the discharge instructions that the nurse should teach the client that you should carry it out or that should follow in your life to prevent the recurrence of DVT? This is a very simple question. First option, do not take car rides longer than 4 hours for at least 3 to 4 weeks. Then option 2, drink plenty of fluids every day and limit caffeine and alcohol intakes. Elevate leg on footstool when sitting and dorsiflex the feet often. Then resume your walking program as soon as possible after getting home. Option 5, sit in a cross-legged position for 5 to 10 minutes to improve circulation. We'll see the one by one. The first option says, do not take car rides longer than 4 hours for at least 3 to 4 weeks. Actually, that is not a correct statement. That is not a correct teachment. The client, they can ride for longer than 4 hours. But the thing what they should do, they should take like interval, or they should take some precautionary measures to prevent the occurrence of DVT. So that's why they can use some compression stockings or exercise the calf and the foot muscles frequently, or just dorsiflex the foot. So if they can do such things in between, they can have the ride more than 4 hours. So the first option is incorrect. That is not the correct teaching method or the correct teaching statement that the nurse should give upon discharge. So we can eliminate that option. And then we will see the next option. Drink plenty of fluids every day and limit caffeine and alcohol intake. Okay, that is a good option because the adequate fluid intake, it's very necessary, and also limit caffeine and alcohol intake to avoid the dehydration, because the caffeine and that one will exacerbate the condition. So that is correct. Then the option 3 says elevate leg on a footstool when sitting and dorsiflex the feet often. Okay, that is also a correct statement. When they are sitting, they can just elevate the leg on a footstool. So that is a good statement. Then the option 4, resume your walking program as soon as possible after getting home. Okay, because now it's already resolved, preventing the recurrence of DVT, the client should resume the normal exercise that he used to do before. So that is also correct. So now we have got option 2, option 3 and option 4. Then the another option is options 5, sit in a cross-legged position for 5 to 10 minutes to improve circulation. What do you think? Does that a correct answer? No, it's not a correct answer, because if the client, if they will keep for long time cross-legging, especially for 5 to 10 minutes, that will compress the veins and limits the venous return. So that is not the correct statement. So here you can see the explanation of each options and the rationale of each options. So our answers are option 2, option 3 and option 4. I hope it's clear. So now we have discussed around 3 questions. So you got what are the main signs and symptoms of DVT, and how the questions will come from different scenario, or how the questions options will come, and what are the things a client should do as a preventive method, or what are the things client should not do. So these are main things. So we'll see with another topic on the next video. Bye bye.